This presentation, titled FSSC 22000 versus ISO 22000, Differences, Similarities, Which is Right for What Kind of Organization, comes to us from Nuno F. Soares. Nuno F. Soares, PhD, is the founder of The Why of Food Safety, Become the SLO initiative, and the author of several books and articles on food safety, namely FSSC 22000 V5 and ISO 22000 2018 Blueprint and Food Safety in the Seafood Industry. He's an author, consultant, and trainer in food safety with more than 21 years as a food safety, quality, and plant manager. And with that, take it away, Nuno.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for the introduction. Well, really a pleasure and an honor to be here again and to present in Food Safety Expo. Thank you for having me. Well, today we are going to talk a little bit about FSSC and ISO 22000. And well, I'm not going to talk a lot about me. You can find me online if you wish. And I want to start with this image. Why? Because when I was looking for an image that worth 1,000 words to explain to you the relation between FSSC and ISO, I remember the symbol of yin and yang. Then what I did? Well, I searched in Google to see if what I remember from this philosophy made sense. I end up, like many of us, in Wikipedia, where I could read Yin and Yang in ancient Chinese philosophy is a concept of dualism, describing how seemingly opposite or contrary forces may actually be complementary, interconnected, and interdependent in the natural world. Even though FSSC and ISO are not opposite or contrary forces, the second part of the philosophy is a good description of how FSSC and ISO relate. So I decided to use this picture anyway. And let's talk about ISO. And to talk about ISO, you know, we have to go back to the black and white pictures as it was created back in 1947, joining 67 technical committees, right? That were a group of experts focusing on a specific subject. ISO is an international organization for standardization, and it's truly, truly global. One interesting detail I want to share with you. Because International Organization for Standardization would have different acronyms in different languages, the founders decided to give it the short form ISO. ISO is derived from the Greek isos, meaning equal. Whatever the country, whatever the language, is always ISO. And this is why it's interesting and important to know history, because it impacts the present and explains so many things we can't understand if we only look to the present. In this detail of the name, the founders of ISO clearly defined what they were looking for: a truly global organization. And if you look to this map, you can see that, for instance, all the blue members here, all the blue countries, the countries that are blue are named as member bodies, right? In yellow, you have the correspondent members. You can see here in brown, you have subscribed members. And then when you look to the whole world, you can find only a few countries where the ISO is not present, you know. So this means you can see that ISO has 165 member bodies, and ISO is also a non-profit foundation. The process and even the way of working of ISO and the way it updates the standards are very peculiar. All changes aimed to be done by consensus, right? So you can imagine this is not easy inside a technical committee that is responsible for developing the standards. For instance, in ISO 22000 case, it was only revised for updates. They are only revised for updates every 5 years, okay? And in the last time it was revised, the 2018 version was only published more than 3 years after it was decided the update. Okay, this is the way ISO work. It's peculiar to their process, right? Then I went to the ISO survey of management system standard certifications to look to some numbers. Okay, these are really impressive numbers of some of the standards. And let me emphasize here the one that we are here to talk about, the ISO 22000. So in the end of 2019, the ISO 22000, the number of ISO 22000 certificates was 33,502. Okay, and why not 2020? Well, because this report only is releases usually on August every year, so we still don't have now the numbers from 2020. Okay, but these were the latest numbers available regarding the number of certificates of ISO, and there are a lot of certifications out there, right? And let me emphasize this also. In 2018, the number of certificates was 32,120. So there was a really interesting increase in the from 2018 to 2019. Let me show you also the top 10 countries that have ISO 22000 certificates. If you open the 2019 ISO survey, you will see that in 2019, there were 163 countries, different countries that had ISO 22000 certificates. That's really, really impressive. Of course, you can see here on the top a lot of certificates in China, India, Greece, well, then Japan, Italy. These are the top 5 countries with ISO certification. But as I was telling you, notice that 163 different countries have ISO 22000 certificates. Okay, this represents roughly 84% of the countries. Okay, so really, really widespread these ISO 22000 certificates. And well, let's continue. Here it is. So this is a little bit about history. Well, I'd like to emphasize to you that back in 1997, the ASAP annex was headed to the Codex Alimentarius General Principles of Food Hygiene. Okay, the annex entitled Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point, HACCP system and guidelines for its application. And this was the annex that became an international reference and a cornerstone to the development of the first versions of ISO 22000 back in 2005, as you can see here, and then also very important for the FSSC 22000 that came 4 years later. Just for you, just a note, a small note here, a brief note here, because this document, the guidelines for the Codex Alimentarius General Principles of Food Hygiene, okay, this document was recently updated at the end of last year, and now we have a new version. So stay tuned, search for that in the internet because it's free and it's a very important document, and there is, as I told you, a cornerstone, a base for ISO, for FSSC, but not only for these ones. Many other food safety programs also base their principles on the ASAP principles and use a lot of information from this Codex Alimentarius General Principles of Food Hygiene. Moving on, and I told you before, okay, as you could see in the last slide, FSSC, it was published for the first time back in 2009. And the question is, why FSSC was so important, okay, why made such sense to publish another food safety scheme at that moment in 2009. And remember that ISO 22000 was published 4 years ago. in 2005, but other food safety programs like SQF, BRC, EFS already were published and present and already were being used in the food industry. But the truth is that FSSC was relevant right from the first day, and that is why one of the reasons why the numbers increased so much in the last years. But it was relevant right from the first day because it emerged from a concrete industry need. We had ISO 22000 since 2005, but the industry claimed that ISO had a big problem: lack of specific and detailed prerequisites. Okay, and on 2008, okay, sponsored by big companies like Danone, Kraft, Nestlé, and Unilever, we saw the release of PAS 2028 was released 2008, sorry, and it was released back in 2008. And PAS outlined the requirements for controlling food safety hazards in food manufacturing environment. Okay, and this was the piece that was missing, the tool that was missing to make ISO even more robust. Okay, and so now the big manufacturers were looking to have a common set of prerequisites. Okay, and then they can combine this common set of prerequisites with ISO 22000. And it was on this combination of ISO 22000 and PAS 2008 that was the base, the cornerstone to release of a creation of FSSC 22000. At the moment, things have changed. Okay, at the moment we have here already the 2018 version, and PAS has now been substituted by the ISO-TS family with only one exception, as we will see later in this presentation. Right, let's move on. Okay, now, before I'm going to share you a little bit about FSSC story also, but before that, let me just talk about some other characteristics that are important to understand how FSSC works. The FSSC scheme is managed by a non-profit foundation, right? FSSC 22000, and governed by an independent board of stakeholders, where last year you could find companies like Coca-Cola, Unilever, Metro, or Danone, okay? But in this board, you can also find representatives of organizations such as Independent Association of Accredited Registrars or the Confederation of Food and Drink Industries of the European Union. Okay, in the strict, if you look also to the scheme structure, you can find also an advisory committee to make recommendations regarding technical aspects such as unannounced audits and food fraud or guidance documents, among others. Okay, so coming back to history, very briefly, look, since the beginning, FSSC was benchmarked by the GFSI, and we are going to talk a little bit about GFSI in a minute. Then there was a series of new scopes that were added, okay, including one very interesting, a model of quality, right, where people can use also a ISO standard, ISO 9001 to 2015, if they want to add to their certificate a quality model, where they check also about the quality requirements of ISO 9001 2015. More. Then after that, we saw the release of version 4 with even more scopes. And then more recently in 2019 and 2020, we had the version 5 and version 5.1. That is the one that will be mandatory after the 1st April this year, right? And let's show to you also some numbers about FSSC. And first thing I want to share with you is that the numbers of FSSC are very, very easy to find. So you just go to the website from FSSC 22000 and right in the front page, in the home page, you can see these 4 numbers. So when I print this in January 2021, FSSC was almost reaching out the 25,000 landmark of certificates worldwide. Okay, remember this is the most recent programs of all that I've told you. Okay, so 24,735 at that day. Okay, but growing, still growing. Okay, and also another important number again. Okay, 154 countries. Right, again, close. Like ISO, FSSC also is widely distributed all over the world. And that's exactly what I want to share with you right now. Look at this diagram, okay? As you can see here, this figure, if you want, you can see here that the certificates are geographically distributed, okay? There are some big numbers here, okay? You have here some big numbers in Europe, for sure. A lot here in Japan. Sorry, this was not okay. Okay, so let me just clean this. Okay, now it's working. Here, Japan. Okay, you have some North America. Also, there are some interesting values. India here. Okay, China also. But well. You can see here the most important aspect of this picture is that you can see how widely spread throughout the world there are. In fact, when we look to the United Nations, okay, and you know that the United Nations has 193 member states, and again, if you do the math like I did in ISO, the 154 certificates account more or less to 80% of the countries, okay? 80% of all the countries in the world have at least one certificate of FSSC 22000, okay? This is important for you to understand how these two food safety management systems are spread all over the world. But now let's focus a little bit more on the building blocks from ISO and from FSSC 22000. You have, until now, I have talked a lot about ISO 22000, and here it is, but it's not only ISO 22000. To have FSSC, you have to have the ISO 22028 in the requisites, also incorporate sector-specific technical specifications, okay, for prerequisite programs. Also, the market-driven additional requirements. These are additional requirements, and I will explain you a little bit more what they are. Not what they are, but why, and what they are, but also why they were introduced, as well as statutory and regulatory requirements. Okay, this is important and mandatory if you want to implement FSSC. Now, let me show you here what I was telling you. Here you can see on the left, you can see here the ISO 22002X family. This is a series of ISO technical specifications specific for prerequisites, okay, for specific sectors. Okay, so you have one for food manufacturing, for catering, for farming, for food packaging manufacturing, transport and storage, feed, and animal food production. Okay, and as I told you before, if you remember, there is only one sector that is not, that is still hasn't a technical specification from ISO. Okay, so for FSSC, if you are in the retail wholesale sector, you have to use the pass 221/2013. Okay, otherwise you should use one of the ISO TS family prerequisites. Right, so this is on the left. This is one of the building blocks, the prerequisite programs. But as I told you, you have here on the right the additional requirements, okay? So these are the 15 additional requirements that are included in version 5.1. And remember that version 5.1 is starts to be mandatory after 1st April. So if you have an audit before that, it's not 5.1, version 5.1 that will be audit. But well, after that, and we don't know for how long, as this is so commonly being updated, but up to then, you will, of course, have to use these additional requirements. And what I want to share with you about that, I won't take too much time explaining each of one. That is not the goal of today's presentation. But the idea behind these additional requirements are for allowing ISO, or in this case, FSSC, to be recognized or benchmarked against GFSI. Okay, so I will tell you a little bit about GFSI next in the few minutes, but take a note on this. Okay, these are requirements that FSSC believe that ISO don't have in, or at least don't have in enough detail, and they decided to add to their scheme, so ISO can be used, can be in some way, FSSC can be accepted and benchmarked against the GFSI requirements. The only thing I want to share with you before we leave this slide, and if you may notice, there are some different colors here in the additional requirements. And why did I do that? Because if you look to the orange requirements, this means that these requirements are applicable to all food sectors, okay? So if this one, despite what kind of food sector you work for or work in, you have to implement these additional requirements. The ones in blue are specific for some of the sectors, okay? So it doesn't mean that you have to implement, for instance, management of allergens, here the 6, the management of allergen, it's not for everyone. So you have to see if your organization or the organization you work for shall have this requirement implemented or not, because it depends if it is, for instance, if it is food manufacturing, it has, if it is, for instance, transport and storage, it doesn't, okay? You know, so this is the situations you have to look, right? Okay, so moving on. Okay, and let's, oh, this is a thank you. And no, this is not the end yet. I know it seems like the final slide, but it's not, because I thought this would be the perfect moment to do an acknowledgement, okay? I want to thank FSSC team for being so supportive along these years. I have been talking with them, okay? Well, since the interviews, for instance, Alding Hilbrands, that is the technical director, was kind enough to do interviews with me, or Corneli Guilherme also, that is the managing director, and they did some interviews for my books. Corneli was kind enough even to give a commencement speech to my 2020s class of the FSSC and ISO Blueprint training. Well, they are really supported, and I like to thank them for that, and even for this presentation, and that's why also I'm here giving a public acknowledgement. They were kind enough, in this case was Cor Groneveld, responsible for market development, that shared with me 2 pictures that are very interesting and that I'm going also to share with you. So, and in this picture you have a lot of information, okay, regarding FSSC. We have talked about most of them, okay? You can see here the number of certificates. This is at that time, okay? The number of partners, the number of global representations, okay? They have also here a history, but well, also importantly, again, is here on the right, the food sectors, okay? As you can see, the 7 food sectors that can apply for a FSSC certification, right? Because they have already specific prerequisites program published. Okay, now, common characteristics from a food safety management system that are important, and that most of the times also distinguish FSSC and ISO from other standards. I will emphasize, maybe I will only emphasize 3 of them. A management system approach, okay? Of course, having a management system approach, this is more work for you, okay? If you are a food safety management, if you are a food safety professional, if you want to implement or consult for a company to implement FSSC and ISO, you will have problems, more work, because here you have to address things like context of the organization, interested parties, organizational risk, for example, but at the same time, this amplifies the impact in the organization of the food safety management system. And even, in my opinion, helps food safety professionals to sell top management the importance of implementing such a system, right? Because it's a way so they can understand this language, the language of interested parties, the risks that the organization face. Okay, so it is not only technical food safety stuff, but they are also some aspects that really influence the organization and can help the organization go further. Okay, and it's not only food safety issues. Okay, they have a first part of the food safety management system that has a lot about related with organization, some aspects of the risks that organization face, and so on, right? So this is a very interesting aspect. Now we have the risk-based approach, okay, and the focusing on continuous improvement. A risk-based approach make it not so much prescriptive, okay, so and more adaptable to the particular circumstances of the organization, the place in the food chain and sector, right? So this is one great advantage of a risk-based approaches. Continuous improvement, well, this is a state of mind, right? That should be dear to all food safety professionals. Remember, well, if you don't know, but ISO 22000 has 2 PDCA cycles, plan, do, check, act cycles, right? One for the organization, as I told you, a lot about the organization, and another for the operation, more focused on the part of the asset, right? I would emphasize one more aspect. It facilitates also the integration of management system and combined audits. As you have seen before, FSC already has a quality model where organization can implement a quality management system requirements according to ISO 9001:2015. It is also available the combined audits. This means organization can audit the food safety requirements and quality requirements in the same audit. Okay, and these are an advantage from working there, from these 2 standards. And well, this picture is only to share with you. If you think of in GFSI Global Food Safety Initiative, that is a global organization that benchmark food safety programs. If you think like an umbrella, we can look at FSSC as the way for ISO 22000 to go in this big umbrella, GFSI umbrella, okay? So they are very close, as you can see. They are both non-profit, okay? They are both management systems, but as we have seen, ISO FSSC has these additional requirements. The additional requirements usually implemented to comply with the GFSI requirements, okay? And that is one important aspect, okay? Another important aspect is that, well, ISO could never be inside GFSC because of some issues related with the way it is managed, you know? So it is something, there are some rules, okay, related to how the company should be managed, and you know ISO has a specific way of working, and that will not be able to comply with these requirements from GFSI. So this is only to make this clear to you. Another interesting aspect is when we are talking about FSSC, all the documents from FSSC 22000 are easily available and for free in their website, okay? And more important, or as important as that, you can find it in several different languages, right? There are also 5 translations that are official translations, okay, and they are all free, okay. And this is important, especially for food safety professionals that are not English native, okay. This is where you have an official translation and you avoid incorrect translations or having to pay for it, right? So these 6 different languages, according to a research I did, are the native language from more than 2.2 billion persons in the world. So this means that you cover, okay? So many people can read the documents in their native language. One advice, well, one information, the latest version 5.1, it's not still translated, okay? And I asked FSSC, but there is no date suggested, or they still cannot give me a date for the publication of the last version translation. We are now close to the end of the presentation, and I think this is the perfect time to look a little bit forward, okay? And looking forward to these 2 standards, I think and I believe that makes sense that ISO and FSSC continue to grow, okay? FSSC may grow not only from organizations that have ISO 22000 and are looking to join a GFSI benchmarked food safety program, okay? They can grow from integrating these organizations that need to have a GFSI benchmarked food safety program. Well, because sometimes some retailers demand, or some organizations demand, for instance, that their suppliers are certified at least for one of the GFSI benchmarked, okay? But they can also grow, okay, from organizations that don't have any system yet, no food safety program, no food safety management system, and won't implement one, okay? ISO, well, ISO has recovered in the last year, in the last report, because in 2027 and 28, and the number of certificates reduced. But as I told you, in the last report, we find 1,300 new certificates more issued, okay? So we still don't know well how COVID will impact the growth. We know that in 2019, ISO increased the number of certificates. We know that FSSC is still growing every year. Okay, you can see that, and it's very easy because you can follow in the website. But well, we are not sure how this will end. Finally, to finish. Similarities, okay, as I've told you, well, both of them are global, widely distributed, implemented all over the world. Both of them are food safety management systems, right? Both of them are risk-based, make easy to integrate with other food safety systems, with other management systems, sorry. And both are ruled by non-profit organizations, okay? These are the main similarities of the 2. What are the main differences? Well, FSSA has specific prerequisites programs that you have to implement and follow. FSSA has additional requirements, and FSSA is GFSI recognized. And well, what makes sense to your organization? I would say they both make sense. You have to look, they are based on the same document. FSSC, of course, has a little bit more work, let's say like that, because you have prerequisites, you have additional requirements. But in some cases where organizations are looking to enter a new market, organizations have to comply with the client requirement to have a GFSI recognized food safety program, well, they have to go to FSSC instead of ISO. But more important than everything, if you have one of them, you are already in a good place to guarantee food safety and to guarantee that people don't have to get sick by eating food, okay? Finishing, Now you understand probably better why at the beginning I suggested FSSC and ISO are interconnected, complementary, and interdependent, okay? I also use sometimes this sentence because this sentence is a sentence from a famous Portuguese singer and songwriter. In the song, he has that it's much more is what unites us than what separates us. And I think this sentence is really a good explanation and a good philosophy to understand what is ISO and FSSC. Okay, everybody, this is my presentation. This was my presentation. Again, thank you for being there, for the time you took to attend this presentation. I hope I can see soon. If you want, you can just scan my code here on your LinkedIn app to join my network. Or if you have below here my website and my email. And thank you again for watching.
And thank you, Nuno Soares, for that look at the appropriate food safety standards for an organization. And that concludes this presentation.